issue. Eric Farnsworth is Vice President of the Council of Americas. He joins me live from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. I understand you just returned recently from Brazil. Let's start with the question of leadership. This started out on social media sites and Facebook. Is there a unified leadership, though?
Well, there doesn't appear to be. You're right. I was just in Brasilia yesterday, in fact, and the riots at that point were largely peaceful and not nearly as large as they've grown to be. And I think that's part of the problem. As they grow, the leadership continues to be undefined. The demands are less defined. And so it's a little bit more difficult for the government to actually respond in a meaningful way because they don't really know what the protesters are demanding at this point. It seems to be a general primal scream, if you will, against corruption, but corruption is very amorphous. How do you address that in a meaningful way? I think that's what the government has to try to find out.
But in a sense, I mean, it's of course a challenge to the government. Is it not also a challenge to the protest movement when you have this sort of disparate range of demands?
Well, it really is. And in fact, we saw that here in our own country in the U.S. With the protests against Wall Street and the Occupy movement that we saw over the last couple of years. And that really seemed to fall apart because the demands were so diverse that you really couldn't rally around anything in particular. So I think there is going to be a challenge to the protesters to try to define exactly what they want. What is it that they're asking from the government? It's hard to complain that it's not being delivered if you don't know exactly what you're asking for.
Whatever happens, I guess, to the protest, though, the basic question is going to remain, how does the government deal with the very deep sense of dissatisfaction that very clearly has been uncovered by these protests?
Yeah, I think that's the key question. The fact is the bus rate hikes was simply the pretext. That was really the spark that really tapped into a very deep-seated frustration among the population. Brazil's economy has done very well over the past couple of years, but this last year growth lagged. This coming year growth is projected to lag. And when you're doing well, when your standard of living is increasing, you can put up with things like inferior infrastructure and lots of frustrations. But when your quality of living is perhaps not gaining or stagnating or even going backward, then these daily frustrations really become aggravating, and I think that's what people are really expressing frustration. Why can the government build fancy football stadiums and not spend that hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars improving the things that will affect their daily lives, the streets, the education, the things that a growing economy, a growing middle class increasingly demands? I think that's really at the root of what's going on.
Now, okay, putting that all, I guess, into context, where do you see these protests going?
Well, it's a really